whichever one you want. I'm going to do the same thing. There is this word from the Lord in Paul's second letter to Timothy, chapter 4, verses 6b through 7. The time of my departure has come. I have fought the good fight. I have finished the race. I have kept the faith. Henceforth there is laid up for me a crown. It is said that the Italian painter Tintoretti had as his major ambition the capture of the sea on canvas. But after numerous efforts to do so and failures to reach his goal of capturing what he was looking for, he exclaimed in exasperated defeat, and this is the quote, "No one can paint it. It keeps growing ever vaster and vaster." I share the feeling about any efforts to paint in any way our fallen giant and leader, verbally or otherwise. But since I cannot desert this canvas, please pray with me for a few moments as I try to put something of merit and worth on it. For who here can capture and share the mind, the dedication, the love, and the will of this fallen giant to move Detroit forward by uniting its citizens in a forged equality of responsibility and benefits? Yet, it is my duty to try, and you will please tolerate my efforts, to put a few brush strokes on this canvas as I try to paint this vast sea of humanity called Coleman Young on the canvas of this eulogy. While our fallen brother chose David as his favorite biblical exemplar, telling me that David was one bad expletive, and then quickly apologizing as if he really meant it. He did like the gritty, gutsy humanity and the brilliant strategies of his favorite character. And he and David had significant areas of lifestyle overlap. Yet God made great and glorious use of each of them, as he has done and does for each of us who allows him. But it is Paul's letter to Timothy, 4, 1 through 8, to which I invite your attention as most appropriate for the next few minutes. In this passage, Paul declares that I quote, "I have fought the good fight. I have kept the faith. I have finished the course. Henceforth there is laid up for me a crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, will award to me on that day, and not only to me, but also to all who have loved his appearing." The passage rings with appropriateness, for it does not extol the ability of the fighter, but rather the nature of the fight. It was the good fight, not the good fighter. And loosely translated, it was the right kind of fight. Not necessarily popular, not prestigious, not personally rewarding, most likely politically dangerous, but it's the good one. Good for the city, good for the citizens, aimed at elevating the quality of life. Every implication in the passage exudes the satisfaction that is the fruit of believing I have fought on the right side for the right reasons at the right time. That was Coleman Young, finding a way of making one to preserve and improve our city, doing the right thing at the right time for the right reason. Coleman Young knew and lived the old axiom, trust and believe as if everything depends on God, and work and struggle as if everything depends on you. He loved this city and the responsibility that being mayor placed on him, and he guarded it jealously and fulfilled the functions and responsibilities religiously, demanding no more of any others than the sacrifices he was really willing to make himself. In fact, he asked no one to go where he did not lead. I recall the pain in his voice and the agony in his eyes when he told me that he would like to run again, but did not believe his health would allow it, since he felt that the campaign and being mayor required a strong and physically able person to administer the city's interests, and any compromise or excuse to do that was beneath him. Another measure of the quality of this man. Now, the man I knew for a while was a pioneer, always learning, with enormous intellectual capacity to grasp and to assimilate, to apply whatever needed to be applied. He was a man who loved this city, as you know and your presence here witnessed and testified to. He loved its citizens and the great potential with an aggressive fervor. He was always envisioning its improvements, for he knew the city is people with competence to get and hold jobs, to build and manage communities, to receive God and transmit a worthy legacy. The man I know was erudite in every area of his vocation, complex but amazingly simple, generous, quick to laugh, disdainful of waste, human and material, patient with the weak, tough on the haughty, the lazy, and the exploiters. He never quit seeking ways to help others. His question, "What can I do?" was never rhetorical. He was a mix of total demand and incredible grace. This collage of humanity is summed up in an act I saw him take years ago when he had called me to his office. While there, he called for a staff member, inquired of another employee. When he heard the report, he said to this staff person, "Fire him and report back to me." A few minutes later, the staffer who had been sent out returned and reported that he had relieved the employee. And the Mayor Young, without a second's hesitation, and to my great surprise, said, "Now find him a job." And of course I sat there, my mouth fell open, and as soon as the staffer closed the office door, I asked him, Mr. Mayor, please excuse my level of intellectual apprehension, but didn't you just fire this person? And now you're telling someone to find him a job? And he looked at me as if I was the only crazy person in the room. In fact, showing all kind of disappointment, impatience, and I think he was on the verge of using one of his choice expletives. But he changed it to reverend. Reverend, he said, I don't want this person to be out of work. The responsibilities of that person requires a job. I just can't have him in my employment. And he went on to explain to me he has a family and he needs to support the family. And without a job, he can't do it. Well, this mayor, this man of great gifts that you've heard from all of those who have spoken, great talent, great generosity, a great sense of humor. In fact, if you even look at his body, it looks almost as if he's ready to laugh and crack a joke of some sort. A great sense of humor, but enormous energy for what was right has passed from this life to the life to come. He has left behind for us jobs undone, but an example of how the job ought to be done. And he has demonstrated a level of commitment to a community that if that kind of commitment can be multiplied to any degree so that more of us will catch the spirit of what it means to take pride in our cities, in our communities, in ourselves, in our children, we have limitless potential to make Detroit the envy not of this nation but of the world. We have had the example well set by a man who looked and faced incredible odds and who, at the point of being unable to do something about many things, nonetheless pointed the direction and started us in the way that we needed to go. We who knew him best knew that, as you've heard from the testimony of many, that his vernacular, which he could use very well, and it ran the gauntlet of the ghetto to the White House, that his vernacular was always, the language usages were always aimed at reaching a point and sending a message. He was, in the very best sense of the word, in my judgment, a messenger in person with a message that he was, not that he did, of liberation, of love, of equality, of the rights of all people, and of the domination of none. Coleman Young understood that none can be free unless all are free. And that none can be safe as long as any are hungry. That the world in which we live is a world that is adequate for the provision and needs of all of us, and that none of us should have so much more than we need, while others of us have less than we need. He was a man who not only believed, but who worked vigorously to implement his beliefs in fact. A lot of things I believe, a lot of things you believe, that you aren't going to tangle with, because you might get your hair pulled from tangling with it. Of course, I won't get mine pulled. I don't have any left. But Coleman Young put his life where his beliefs were. If he believed it, you had to back him off, and you had a heck of a struggle and a battle to push him off the pivotal points and the deities of his belief. He was a man with whom you found very little dichotomy between what he believed and what he did, because he did what he believed and he was what he did. God blessed Detroit at a pivotal point in its history with a man who had pivotal ideas and a pivotal faith. A man who was gutsy, tough, good, quick to laugh, but equally quick to get angry if he thought you were wrong, and had no hesitation about telling you in the best language he could use, with the eloquence that you don't learn in Sunday school or churches. And he did it all, however, in a sense of love. I've never seen him reach out to try to damage anybody in order to get even with them. All of his efforts to whip anybody was to whip them, he said, into shape. He told me once, he said, if you want butter, you got to churn the milk. I know some of y'all don't know anything about that. You aren't country folk. And that there are some things that cannot be brought about unless we apply the right level of discipline. He was a very disciplined man himself. And he was very impatient with the undisciplined and more impatient with the uncommitted, and terribly impatient with the disloyal. And so Coleman Young, who said of this employee firing, had another relationship, because he understood that that's the way God is according to our faith. This God who rejected us because of our shortfalls and sin fired us, and then out of his great mercy and grace sent Jesus to offer us a way of life, and told Jesus to find us a job. And he told Jesus not to look at all the qualifications that is common to humanity. He said, just find the man, give him a job. And any shortfalls he has, I have something called grace that is adequate and sufficient for all his shortfalls. And if it's anything that can't be paid, I've already set my son with sufficient overflow of grace to qualify anyone who will trust me and believe me so that he can have a job in kingdom work. Coleman Young, I believe, accepted that kind of understanding of the grace of God. And he worked as he worked, not because he was trying to do anything for Coleman. He was a very capable and adequate man for his own needs. But there was something about him that made him understand that God had seen in him the capability of not only having a job, but having a job that was God intended, God inspired, God sent, God capable, and that he was the man for the job at that time. And the great thing about this God of ours is that if we take the job, then he has a day when the job is over. For if we do his job, then he has another, what does it say? Another appointment for us. When you get through that, there's another building. He doesn't need this building anymore. It's for our disposal. But if you believe, I have another building, a house not made with hands, eternal in the heavens. And that one, you don't need to see any doctors. Hospitals won't be there. No more sickness, no more sorrow, no more dying. For the book says these former things will have passed away. It's the Christian hope and the Christian belief that this resurrected, crucified, elevated presence of a Jesus through the Holy Spirit allows us, no, commands us, yes, demands of us, leads us, guarantees us that not by anything we do, because we couldn't do anything for ourselves. We lack the will, we lack the capability, we even lack the faith. We didn't want to accept the grace. But for everyone who believes, just believe. Just believe. For whoever believes, though he were dead, yet shall he live. Now, I don't know how that happens. I don't have sense enough to understand that. Because I don't think sense would do it. If it did, the academicians would all have a corner on it. But it said, whoever believes, though he were dead, yet shall he live. Not by what he's done, but by who he has accepted and where he has deposited something that everybody has. Not account at a bank, but where we have deposited our belief. For whoever believes on me, though he were dead, yet shall he live. And that's the bottom line. We came here to celebrate the life and homegoing of a committed believer. I'm going to be through. Because how do you measure belief? You don't measure belief by what folk tell you. You can't measure belief by where folk live. You can't measure belief by the school we attend. Belief is demonstrated by the life we live. And however eloquently Coleman Young could cuss, however bad his temper, when you messed up, Coleman Young lived a life of giving. And the book says that God loved the world so much that he gave.
Come on, put your hands together for the Lord. Amen. The final interment is private. Those that have been designated to go should line up in the processional. We should thank God also for these fine individuals who we neglected to acknowledge. Mr. Jack Smith, who is the CEO of General Motors. Mr. Smith. Also, Dr. Curtis Ivory, the president of Wayne County Community College, one of the mayor's legacies. Those of you that came on the buses will be lined up on Schaefer, prepared to take you back to your cars at the state fair. All of those that came on the buses, don't look for the particular bus that you came on. Just get on any of the 18 buses. They'll all be out there, ready to transport you back to the state fair. You will go out of the Schaefer doors, the Schaefer lobby doors. Someone will escort you there. The Fritz Funeral Home is in charge at this time. Mr. Fritz, we certainly thank him for his kindness, for the Fritz family, for handling the arrangements of our Honorable Mayor, and for their support of this family in this time of need. If I may ask some of the ladies who are members of the New Calvary Missionary Church, Baptist Church, if you would come to assist with the flowers. And certainly if there's anybody that we forgot to recognize, please charge it to our heads and not our heart. Yes, the Tuskegee Airmen. The Tuskegee Airmen. Come on, give them a hand. And the Brewster Old-Timers. The Brewster Old-Timers. The Tuskegee Airmen. Those that have left great legacies for us. Those that have paved the way for us. Come on, let's appreciate them. Everybody standing except the family. Everybody standing except the family.
Will the pallbearers please come? Pallbearers, they were here. Oh, thank you very much.
You have been watching WDIV live in Detroit, the funeral of Mayor Coleman Alexander Young at Greater Grace Temple in Detroit, Michigan. The only thing I can say after 3.5 hours, Devin, and I certainly hope that Emery King, who has been with us all morning, is listening as well, is that we have been to church today. If you've never been to a Baptist service, you got a chance to actually see one of the finest funeral services for a true city leader and a fallen hero.
The aim certainly today was for it to be a celebration of a life, and I don't think anyone who watched this could argue that it was anything but that.
We heard from almost anyone who either worked with Coleman Young, ran against Coleman Young, had been touched by Coleman Young. The music was just tremendous. 2 songs from Detroit's own Aretha Franklin. The choirs that were made up from 2 churches, Greater Grace Temple, and of course the late mayor's own church, and that would be New Calvary Baptist Church.
Now you can see the flags there flapping in the breeze a bit outside. The honor guard is assembling that will accompany the mayor's body to the cemetery. This procession now will, the motorcade will move east on 7 Mile Road over to Woodward, then all the way down Woodward to Jefferson, and then take Jefferson up to Mount Elliott over to the cemetery, Elmwood Cemetery, where 28 other past mayors of Detroit have been buried, 11 U.S. senators and military commanders dating back to the Revolutionary War, and now Coleman Alexander Young.
Devin, we want to bring Emery King, who has been at Greater Grace Temple throughout the morning. Emery, are you there?
I am here, Devin and Carmen. It was, I think, Devin, you coined it exactly. It was a celebration of Coleman Young's life. Carmen, you said 3.5. I think, by my count, it was actually over 4.5 hours.
4.5
I think we
hours.
got started about 11:15 or so, shortly after 11 o'clock. And here we are after, what, 2:30? 2:45? Well, maybe you're right. My count is off. But nevertheless, it was a long service, but sitting inside watching it, it didn't seem to be that long because everyone was so engrossed by the wide array of speakers and all of the comments. Very few people moved from their seats during this funeral today.
And you know, they had asked each one to be brief, and certainly it was very hard to talk about Coleman Young in 2 minutes, and some tried, some couldn't do it, but
well, you know,
I think we all benefited from what they each had to say.
You know, what I thought was interesting was right at the beginning, I think 2 things set the tone for this funeral. One was the very first solo, "The Wind Beneath My Wings" by one of the soloists from the choir. And when she reached that chorus, it was like electricity passed through this crowd, and there was just applause that kind of waved across the crowd. And then I think, you know, that people felt at that point like they were in church. Then after that, I think what really set the tone for this funeral was the Reverend Charles Adams of Hartford Memorial Baptist Church. Reverend Adams got up and he called Coleman Young a prince, a pauper, a protagonist. He said that he was an iconoclast who did not often use religious language. And from that point on, there were these repeated references to Mayor Young's use of the King's English. But Reverend Adams did urge everyone to focus on the content of what Coleman Young said instead of the form of his language.
Emery, I think you're competing with this choir here that we're going to get a chance to hear maybe just once in our lifetime. Why don't we take a listen?
listening to at Greater Grace, as people begin to file out of the church, we show you this aerial view. There were people standing out on the street around the fence outside the church property looking in when we came out, and right at the beginning of the eulogy. Dignitaries coming out right now. We have some people that we're trying to get up here with us. I was saying earlier, Carmen and Devin, if you're there, we were talking about Reverend Adams. You know, I think Reverend Adams set the tone. He was supposed to, everybody was supposed to go 2 minutes. Reverend Adams went, we started timing Reverend Adams, I think, about 3 or 4 minutes in, and he went 10 minutes beyond that.
Did he? Okay.
So I think that kind of gave an unofficial permission to everybody else to do what they could do. Then we have some times down here. I think Dennis Archer went 4.5 minutes. Somebody else went 5 or 6 minutes. It kind of stretched out, didn't it?
But you know, Mayor Archer was really kind when he said he didn't know who put the program together, but he wanted to thank them for letting him follow Reverend Adams. You know?
Well, even Doug Frazier, who was the former president of the UAW, who stood up and said either people here forgot their watch or can't tell time, even he was led to go beyond the 2 minutes as well.
And then we got into this situation where everyone was asking everyone else to stand up. You know, Conrad Mallett asked the Supreme Court justices and the judges to stand up. The members of the city council were asked to stand, all of which is appropriate, but it's certainly time-consuming as well in a service like this.
And then there were those who were not actually a part of the program, but who were there, and certainly former City Council President Irma Henderson had a chance to speak, and there were a few others. Congressman John Conyers.
Take your shoes off. We'll keep them warm. I'm talking to Aretha Franklin,
all right,
who is on her way up, and as we get her microphone and get her settled and get her, come on up. Come on here, I'll hold your purse. You guys go ahead for a while. I'll tell you in a second.
Well, we can talk about Aretha because for many she will be among the highlights of what happened today with her. Speaking of highlights, I wanted you to hear that last note from We Shall Overcome that we had been privy to last night. But Aretha Franklin singing I'll Fly Away and The Impossible Dream. Marvelous part of what we saw today.
I wonder, Emery, if you can, if you're so listening, how she felt about singing either one of the songs and why she selected those two in particular to pay tribute to Coleman Young.
We are here with Ms. Franklin. Ms. Franklin, you're so nice to join us. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
We are on with Carmen Harlan and Devin Skillian back in our studio.
Hi, Carmen.
Hi, Aretha.
First of all, what did it mean to you to be a part of this for Mayor Young? It was obviously quite a touching moment and moving moment for you.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I was just honored to have been asked to sing and just delighted to have sung for such a great man.
Talk a little bit, if you will, about the selection of songs today.
I sung I'll Fly Away, which I felt was appropriate, and it's one of my favorite songs, and I just wanted to do that for him. And also The Impossible Dream, which I felt was very appropriate and was certainly indicative of Mayor Young's tenure. Not only in the city, but nationally.
Tell me a Coleman...
And in the Democratic Party as well.
I'm sorry. Tell us a Coleman Young story.
A Coleman Young story, well, one of my fond memories of Mayor Young was, and I used to catch him off guard with this all the time, he was never quite ready for it. No matter how many times I saw him or wherever, I would say, "Good evening, Your Honor," and it would just crack him up. He just loved it, and I loved springing it on him like that. It would just tickle him to no end. Because every now and then he would get a little ornery, so I think that's really what tickled him. It kind of touched his funny bone.
Take us back a little bit. I know that you've, it was said in the church today that you had a relationship, a personal relationship with Mayor Young, your family.
Yes, that's right, for many, many years.
Tell us a little bit about your relationship. How far back do you remember?
We don't want to go back that far. Okay. Well, Dr. Young, who was the mayor's cousin and physician, delivered two of my children, and the Youngs and I have been friends for many, many years. Claudia, Dr. Young, and Sydney, and Juanita, and Bernice, and Barbara Parker, and Bernice Carter, and his part of his administration. I've been very close to them, and just greatly admired Mayor Young.
What do you think will be Mayor Young's legacy?
And, pardon me, he and my dad were great friends as well, and the Franklin family will always be grateful to him for C.L. Franklin Boulevard.
What do you think finally will be Mayor Young's legacy?
So many things. One of the greatest, integrating the police department, his leadership, no doubt, the scholarships. He was just involved in so many facets of the city, and I feel like he was very much the heart and soul of the city.
You were, if I may say so, visibly moved on that first song, The Impossible Dream.
Yeah.
You were, weren't you?
I felt like shouting. I really did. I really did.
We could tell it was a wonderful moment, as it always is when we listen to you sing.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for joining us.
Much.
It's so nice to see you.
Okay, Emery.
All righty.
Thank
All
you.
righty, thanks.
And of course, Emery, pass it on to her as well, that this service would not quite have been the same without her and her contributions today. And there were contributions of so many. The young woman who sang The Wind Beneath My Wing was just tremendous, and we don't know her name.
I'm sorry we don't have her name. That is a terrible
I want to tell you.
She is with the Greater Grace Temple Choir, and she was just phenomenal. Oh,
and she helped to set the stage for what transpired today during this funeral procession, the celebration of life of Coleman Alexander Young, Sr. And there was another, as there were many special moments, one in particular, and I suppose we could thank Morris Hood for that, and he took time out during his remarks to introduce to the audience, and certainly or to the members there and to our television audience, Coleman Young Jr. And if you were with us last night on the Night Beat, you got a chance to, I hope you did, to see in an interview his thoughts about his father, why he decided to take his name at this time in his life. He's 15 years old, and he is very proud to bear the name of Coleman Young Jr. And Morris Hood introduced him today.
And just before the funeral, we also saw a very poignant moment as he moved past, while the casket was still open, and moved past seeing his father for the last time.
Emery, you wanted to say something?
I did want to say something. I noticed that moment too, Carmen, when Morris Hood said that, and also what also underscored the family's concern that Coleman Young Jr. not be overexposed. Did you notice that Morris Hood said, I think that's okay,
right.
To the sisters? I thought that was an interesting moment.
Well, you know, they want to protect him, Emery, and you can understand why. This is a whole new world for him. He hasn't had an opportunity actually to really, I guess, get grounded in just exactly what he's inherited here, and they want to give him a chance to feel it and to learn it, to study it, and we're going to hear more from him. But I think right now the family is very smart to protect him right now and to give him an opportunity just to get comfortable with it for now.
I agree.
And a good time to talk about the family too, Emery, because they have had to share all of these last couple of days with so many people. They are finally going to get some poignancy, some private moments in their life, because the service that will be held at Elmwood Cemetery is really the first private time that they've had, one that the public will not be as heavily involved with, and they'll finally get to have some moments alone. And they really have had to share this moment with so many people. This must have been a very difficult time for them.
It is. I think you're right, and I think they're very much looking forward to that. They were so gracious to give that time to the staff members and to the members of the public. So I'm sure that they're certainly looking forward to that. I think things are getting set to pull off here. It is pulling off now and getting set to head out on the 7 Mile Road and head over to Woodward and work its way over to Elmwood Cemetery.
Certainly. Emery, this has been a long week for all of us, certainly, and you've done a tremendous job in capturing the spiritual side of this goodbye, a long goodbye, a week-long goodbye, actually, to Coleman Young, first at the funeral home, then at the Museum of African American History, where his body was in state for 2 days, and the lines never seemed to stop. And we want to thank you so much for bringing us that coverage in your own special way and putting your own special brand to it as well.
Well, that's very gracious of you, Carmen, and just indulge me, if you will, that none of this could have been possible without the entire staff, and certainly the technical staff here at Channel 4, who has made so much possible. It's really been great, and as always, great working with you guys, and It's just been an incredible, historic week in Detroit.
I know we'll sit down after this is all over and we'll all have our own stories to share, but you saw the hearse leave the church and the procession will get started there, and as Devin told us, the internment is a private one, and so we want to begin to wrap up our coverage here on Channel 4, WDIV, live in Detroit, and our special coverage of the mayor's funeral has forced the preempting of your favorite Channel 4 soap operas, but they will still air. So you need to set your VCRs for these times.
Today's episode, first off, of Days of Our Lives will be seen overnight Saturday morning at 3:35 a.m. So you want to set your machine before you go to bed tonight.
Another World will air Sunday morning at 3:35, and so you want to set your machines for that before you go to bed tomorrow night. And we'll bring you the midday lottery numbers coming up on the Newsbeat at 5.
Much more coming up on the funeral and today's celebration of Coleman Young's life as we wrap things up. I think probably the best reflection on what we heard today. No fewer than 3 speakers pointed to the 2nd chapter of Timothy, which says, I have fought the good fight. I have finished the race. I've kept the faith.
Very well said. We thank you for joining us, and for Devin, Emery King, the rest of the Channel 4 team, I'm Carmen Herlin. We'll say goodbye with some lasting images from the funeral of Coleman Young, the mayor and the man.
To dream the impossible dream.
Let's celebrate the life and legacy of our mayor, Coleman Alexander Young. God bless you.
To fight the unbeatable foe.
I say to you, I love Coleman Alexander Young. And I love him for being a man with a capital M. Long live the king.
When Coleman Young walked into a room all by himself, he was never outnumbered.
He loved this city, he loved the people of the city, and the people of Detroit loved Mayor Coleman Young.
The spirit of Detroit is not in some green steel statue on the side of the building. The spirit of Detroit lies embodied within Coleman Alexander Young.
And said, thank you, Jesus. Thank you for a great man. And I know the 2 minutes is up, Mark. I know it's up. No, the mayor has told you, and you will be on your mission. And do your job. Do your job like I'm doing mine today. Thank you.
You ever know that you were my hero? Everything I wish that I could be. I can fly higher than an eagle. Oh, you are the wind beneath my wings.
We can go forward together because he dreamt the inconceivable, he thought the unthinkable, he reached the unreachable, and he did the impossible. And he is still telling us, go forward together. You can do it. You are the children of God. It doth not yet appear what you shall be, but go forward together, knowing that you've got what it takes to make life livable, love bearable, pain believable, trouble endurable, tragedy transformable, time redeemable, cities renewable, mountains movable, rivers crossable, hard work doable, justice achievable, freedom available, sickness curable, sin forgivable, sky reachable, death conquerable, hope believable, faith powerful, folks thankful, Jesus visible, and all things possible. We can do it. We will do it because he's still in business. Just move upstairs.
Praise the Lord.
We now join the Sally Jesse Raphael Show, already in progress.
Actually, he didn't know that I programmed his number for his mobile. And I put the number in. I went ahead and I called, and there was a message on there. And she said, my name is, her name. And she said, I love you, honey. She said, I miss you. And she said, I'm looking forward to us being together. I'm in Florida. She said the name of the place. And she said, we'll be together soon. I love you a lot. She said, I thought you'd be by the school to pick me up. And she said, and by the way, she said, when you ask me to marry you, she said, I will.
What's the total amount your husband...
Interesting. The girls bought yellow dresses. I will follow the proper rules. The old log was hollow. The house has a large window. Yesterday, we also practiced reading. Now, let's try this story. Read with me. James said, I am 43 years old. Tim said it was a muggy day. Penny said, Mommy, help me. Tom said that he has a hobby. His hobby is working on cars. Ed said, I drive an oil truck. We ate lunch at the little sandwich joint on the corner. Could you read the word sandwich? Look, sandwich, sandwich. Now read the sentence again. We ate lunch at the little sandwich joint on the corner. Very good. After today, we have 6 remaining lessons. We've covered a lot of material. Short vowels, long vowels, consonants, consonant slides, and we've studied many different word families. We've covered a lot of material in a very short amount of time. All we've covered should give you an excellent start on learning to read. The key to any successful project is